Okay. The last several weeks, we've been talking about, I think in one form or another, basically consciousness. During one of the weeks, we talked about real and false versions of consciousness. And also another one of the weeks, we talked about how whatever we consciously choose in our lives, whatever we're consciously choosing, like what you use to spend your time on, your thoughts on, your words on, the things we consciously choose result in your consciousness. So it makes no sense to claim a certain consciousness. Hi, nice to meet you. I've changed my name. My name is Enlightened. I'm just so enlightened. If you're not making conscious choices that lead to enlightenment, that you're not enlightened. Does that make sense? Pure and simple. The contradictions are ridiculous. I'm enlightenment, and yet none of my thoughts, words, or deeds match that. That's why Buddha, Zarathustra, Jesus, Lao Tzu, they all repeated pretty much one line for sure that they all agreed on, and several lines, but one for sure. Good thoughts, good words, good deeds. It's got to be clear. Or Jesus would elaborate, when you see me, you see the Father. Meaning, I don't talk the Father, Mother, God, and then act differently. And there's this concept that's very popular, and I want to just go after it right now. Because this thing about conscious choices, consciousness, now today channeling. I got great things I can share about that. I can already see that coming. But there's basically two kinds of channels. Conscious and unconscious. Unconscious not meaning bad. Unconscious meaning conscious channels are aware of what they're channeling. Unconscious, they go into a trance and they don't know what they said. Okay? There's a third type, however, that most people don't even imagine or think of or have ever heard of. It's being an integrated channel. So we all channel. But what are you channeling? You can channel your ego, which is what most people do. When you sit down and go, look at that and what they're wearing. Can you believe they thought that looked good? That's channeling your ego. All right? When you start gossiping about people, you're channeling. Nice job. Welcome to Sedona. And all you're doing is channeling evil. That's all you're doing. Now, Jesus talked about that. He told the Pharisees. He didn't use the word channeling, but he basically said it. You guys are just channeling evil. What a thing. No wonder they killed him. Like, does that feel good for people to call you out like that? He's saying, you come from such a fearful, hateful place. You pretend to be spiritual. You're not. And that means you're channeling the wrong source. Change channels. And try a little higher frequency. Oh, wait, we can't find anything on the higher frequencies. Of course not, because you're not living it. You got to kind of get into that higher frequency to be able to hear things of a higher frequency. The good news is we all have beautiful souls. We just forget them. But because you have a beautiful soul, everybody has moments where light leaks through. Those are, when you have beautiful insights and epiphanies, anybody can have them. Even the most evil person can have a little moment where some thought entered to, hey, why don't you try something else? The only difference is they go, no.
Hallelujah.
They just go, no, I'm not, no. No, I'm going to stick to the way I am, unfortunately. So at the end of the day, we all channel. There's moments where we all have the leaking through epiphanies and ahas, and that's beautiful stuff. But the thing we call channeling more overtly or professionally, there are what you could say are unconscious channels, conscious channels. Again, conscious channels are something comes through, they literally set an intention, something comes through, and they're aware of what they say. Edgar Cayce was an unconscious channel. And I hesitate to use the word unconscious because that means it sort of sounds like they're not awake. It just, in this context, it means they're not aware of what they've said. And I want to get to that because there's some great stuff we can share about that. But Cayce was, a channel of Christ consciousness, but he went into a trance to access it. Yogananda was more like an integrated channel because what you see is what you get. And that's not easy. I'll get back to that in a sec. So Edgar Cayce was a channel of Christ consciousness, but he would go into a trance to channel that high awareness. Helen Schuckman, who channeled A Course in Miracles, was a channel, but she was a conscious channel. She was aware all the time of what she was saying and doing. Okay? Now, there's an interesting thing that we should learn from this, and it's a very deep psychological and spiritual thing. Channels, we all have our filters. Now, the filters can be anything from gender, race, upbringing, programming, wounds, past life stuff. So the Spirit of God could purely channel through every one of us watching this program right now. It could give exactly the same message, but it would come out differently for each of us. Why is that? Because it strained through different channels. So if my channel, if my history, if I was a monk, if you were a rabbi, if you were a nun, if you were an agnostic, if you were an intellectual, if you were an astrologer, all of those, the same message coming through from God would come through with an astrological twist or something else. A warrior's going to put, a message. So a person let's say 10 people stand up here to channel the exact same message, let's say from God. And there really is always only one message. I love you, come home. Now, here's what happens. I love you, come home. Welcome to the I Love You, Come Home conference. We have 10 channels, each sharing from God. Would you come out over here, Moses? And he comes up and he goes, oy vey. This whole thing with Egypt captivity, it's got to end. Pharaoh, release my people. Nice. It's still I love you, come home. He's hearing it. We've got to break free from captivity. Martin Luther King steps up. What are you people thinking? That one race can be better than another. Boom, and he brings, I love you, come home. But he's bringing it his way. You have a warrior come up. He's going to be like, we've got to make some changes now. Who's up for this? Let's make a plan. Divide and conquer. Right? You bring a nun up. I think we need to stop hugging and making contact with each other. I'm not picking on nuns. I'm saying that their style would be, hey, a mommy would say it different, and a woman who's tried to be a mommy and lost children a few times, she would say it differently. She'd come from this sad, this wound in her heart. Guys, let's stop taking each other for granted. See, that's what would come through her. Each of us is saying the same thing. Now, the fact that they seem to be different is why we create races and religions and nations and opinions. You and I are going to get to a place, it's going to happen the easy way or the hard way, where we're not going to see those differences anymore. And how do we know we're getting there? When you get your way? No. When people start saying what you want them to say? No. When you consistently continue to hear, I love you, come home. No matter what they're saying, I love you, come home. So there's music, you can listen to. Some of it's very obvious and overt. As a kid, I would listen to Earth, Wind, and Fire. It was very obvious. You're a shining star no matter who you are. It was like, okay. But there were times when I'm like, my filter was not very Earth, Wind, and Fiery. I was kind of in a mood of Black Sabbath. But I would listen to their lyrics, which would say things like, God has given you a choice, and it's up to you now to decide to come home. And I'm like, this stuff is spiritual. They were deeply spiritual, but it's coming through this, boom. Their beat was like a dinosaur walking through the forest. Everything was boom and gloom, But for an adolescent in a hard moment, the music was right, and the lyrics still leak through, I love you, come home. Not all music's going to come across that way. You can hear music of the most gross, dense wording, but if you're really there, you can know how to interpret it differently. You can hear this person's in pain, and I understand pain. Instead of, oh my God, they're speaking negatively. I can hear songs now with some of the most absurd, rude comments and laugh at it. I swear I do, because I get it. Is that, oh, yeah, that's it, yeah. Yeah. I mean, some of it's like really out there. But I get it. People, everything, for people, everything is love or a cry for love. So if you're not hearing the earth, wind, and fire love, then there's a cry for love. And the cry for love is going to sometimes sound very angry and very gross. And of course, it's not just words and songs, it's behaviors and all that as well. Everybody is channeling, but it's coming through our filters. As we grow spiritually, one of the things we're doing that we don't realize we're doing is we're thinning out the filters so that more and more pure light can come through. We call that growing, but it really isn't. How are you going to grow when you're already created divine? You're perfect. The growing looks like growing, but it's really, taking out layers and layers. It's like stacked, depending on how many layers of issues. Let's pretend 100 layers of cheesecloth. Not much is coming through. Because even though it's cheesecloth and it's porous, put 100 layers, it's less porous. So I'm going to get rid of mommy issues and daddy issues. Oh, and then there's that past life thing. And then and you're taking out layers. And eventually, wait, wow. The more I heal, I notice my prosperity is improving. I notice my faith is improving, or whatever else it might be. Suddenly a song comes through. It's like, this is amazing. And on planet Earth, the veils are thinning. And as the veils thin, the light comes through more directly as a frequency. And you know what happens when that happens? It's all going to be peachy? No. What happens is the world of fear fights harder to continue to exist. Now, if you've pulled the layers of cheesecloth off and more light's coming through, what's the ego going to do? The ego has no real power. Evil has no real power. It can't make up layers. It has to scare you into adding them back. I noticed you've been growing lately. Yes, and it feels great. I'll arrange a phone call from your ex. That'll put another layer of cheesecloth back in. Oh, look, mom's called. Whatever's going to be a trigger, it adds the layers back in. The ego has to have your cooperation. In other words, your reaction, which includes, obviously, fears and upsets and, the tummy turning because something happened and so on. We're all channels. The highest thing you can channel is your I am Christ consciousness. That's the highest thing you can channel. But even if you channel Christ consciousness, you're still going to do it in one of those 2/3 ways. Consciously, unconsciously, or as an integrated being. In case I haven't emphasized it enough yet, and I plan on, as we move through this, being an integrated channel is challenging because you're attempting to wear it, to be it. It's one thing. So let me explain. The brilliant thing about Edgar Cayce, first of all, he could channel this highest of high information. But isn't it interesting? He couldn't remember. Well, you just go, well, he was unconscious. He was in a trance. Actually, what's happening is he has a very strong belief system, religious background. A lot of him came from a very fundamental place. He barely made it through elementary school, let alone any other academics. So he was unlearned, let's say. Spiritually, he had only read the Bible, and he's now channeling reincarnation. You know what that causes? It's called conflict. So you know what was perfect for him? Hey, it's not me. I'm just going into a trance. See what he's doing? It's a defense mechanism. All I'm doing is going in a trance. I can't be responsible for what's happening. It's a defense mechanism. Unconscious channeling, I'm not saying you're bad, because he was obviously brilliant. What I'm saying is, the unconscious channeling is because of a filter. He was conflicted between what he was taught and what was coming through. So it was safest for him, and you got to, value people's needs for safety. What worked for him was distance himself from it. In the meantime, he still knows it's coming through. So he had anxieties and depressions. He was a chain smoker to deal with this stuff that was happening inside of his being. You just think, well, with all that he was channeling, wow, it should have been really easy peasy. Every day should have been just stellar. When we're channeling, we're always going to be confronted with ourselves. whatever that is, our stuff. And I'm not saying it's all bad stuff, just whatever the filters are. Helen Schuckman wrote a quote, be like, and the light, da-da-da-da-da-da, fragment, gone, and so it is. You know, it's like, well, what did she say? So it's in fragments. But one thing that was there in a complete form was when the apostle said, you know, this is kind of strange, Mary. We notice some of the conversations you have with Jesus. Like with us, he teaches certain things. But with you, he kind of takes off into really cosmic stuff. Why does he do that with you and not us? Her answer was simple and very honest. She goes, because I believe him. That's it. She goes, you guys think because you have heads. You're men. So you think. And you go, well, I like what Jesus taught because it kind of fits into what I believe. She's like, whatever he tells me, I believe it. And that is really amazing. So I, in my life, said, well, of course, that's the good disciple. That's the good apostle. You told me and I believe you. Why else would I be listening to you if I'm not going to believe what you tell me? I mean, that's the logic for me. So I'm there. I'm going for it. However, try that out and you start to realize there's an anxiety that comes with it, because the more you know the truth, the more the illusion tries to beat you up. The more you believe in love, the more you're going to feel anxious when you see lack of love, because you know something's true. And the more you know it to be true, think of Noah, think of Moses. They did not have an easy life. I mean, if you had what Moses had, he sees God, he talks to God. God, shares with him insights, frees the Israelites. I mean, that's a big job. You think that once he pulled it off, it's like, we could do anything. No. Constant anxiety, constant insecurity. God, maybe you should use another channel. I'm not real gifted with people and gift of speech. I'm not really good this way. You want to profit. You might want to pick somebody else. God said, no, I'm good. I think I chose what I needed to choose. But Moses heard God. He knew it was God. Now, when he said, guess what, Pharaoh? The coolest thing happened. I saw God. Oh, and by the way, he said for you to let go of all your volunteers who were building your city for you, the slaves. You think the Pharaoh goes, well, I think I can work that. I'll start paying Egyptians to do the same job. That's not what most dictators would do. This is an inconvenience to my reality. Bam, 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 on Moses. Noah, hey everyone, I need to let you know, the world's going to be flooded soon. Change your ways. Lot, Sodom and Gomorrah, change your ways. Jesus, hey people, change your ways. They kill him. It doesn't go well. So if I haven't emphasized it enough, I can't say much more on that. That the world doesn't support your knowing. And the more you know something to be true, the more you're creating a rift between reality and illusion. So if you would like to keep some illusion, it's going to hurt you. So you go all the way the other way. Well, now you're going to be walking around Sedona going, peace and love and nothing matters. And yet you have rent to pay. Oh, now we got to deal with that. Well, I wish my landlord would just get it. Rift, tension. How many different ways can you say? It's a major challenge. That's why some of these other channels like Helen, oh no, I'm Jewish, I'm an intellectual, this doesn't work. She was trying to distance herself, but she could feel palpably, she could feel the love and the light of what was coming through. She knew. It was palpable. She could feel that love, that light. But the more she felt it, the more it increased her anxiety. Go Magdalene's route and say, well, why increase anxiety? Just believe it. Well, it's easily said. You're programmed. It's not easily done. It's in the cells of your being. My God, from religion to past lives to whatever else, you're programmed to believe this stuff. So it's not like you can just go, snap my finger, done. You'll have your confrontations, with your filters. I'll have mine. Everybody will have theirs. I recommend, and it's reasonable to say, if ever you hear the voice of God saying, you know what, I think you're ready to become the highest, which is an integrated. Integrated means I don't talk about Christ consciousness, I become it. So if the heavens ever say to you, my beloved, 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 it's time for you to be an integrated channel of Christ consciousness, God. You could go, wow, I would recommend running. I'm not going to tell you to run, but I'm going to say it's an option. It's an option. And I'm just being human when I tell you this. I know that I'm really supposed to tell you, love and God and vibration and so on. I'm just telling you, as a human being, you're increasing the intensity of the water against the dam. You've doubled the volume of water. It's doubled, and it's going to keep growing and growing. The dam is only so high, meaning our knowing that, hey, we're on earth and so on. There's that dam, but there's a pressure building, and God's going, I am that I am, and you are as well. Oh, that's brilliant. Water's rising. And the dam's just shaking, and you're like, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. Give me a double scotch. I've never had scotch, but I think you can have a double. I think I've heard that in a TV show somewhere. I'll have a double, whatever it is. Martinis, whatever people drink. So, boom, boom, boom. Now I never felt called to do that. I was like, no, this should be fine. So by not smoking and not drinking, it just built more pressure. So what am I going to do as a human being? Trying to live in the world, not be of the world. It has been an absolute anxious ride on planet Earth. No connection with family. 80% of my life just dedicated to God. It feels great. 80%. That means I've got 20% or 10 or whatever. I've got this much percent to be a daddy, a partner, a friend, you see? An employer, whatever it is. I've only got this much. The rest is like just stellar. Everything's vibrating great. I've only got this much humanness, let's call it. And that will also kick your butt. Because when you only got this much ability to relate to the human side, where are you going to get a job? Okay, so go to Walmart. Hi, I'd like to work here. Okay, can you tell us about yourself? Well, I'm barely here. Barely here. So I might be walking through the aisles singing Earth, Wind, and Fire. You're a shining star no matter who you are. Because I believe that. And they're like, I see. Okay, well, thank you. That'll be enough. And you're like, what do you mean? Or partners. I would like us to be present with each other all the time. And let's do this and let's do that. And let's go on vacations. I don't need a vacation. Let's have children. Why? You don't understand most things. You're going to say, it's all an illusion. And the more that 80% is growing to 80 or more, the less you can relate. But if you're going to be an integrated channel, you have to learn to be here. And now that's going to increase the tension again. Because I know, but I also accept. And I know, but I also accept every day. And so you go, well, that little percent of the human, what is beautiful is that the more you accept the divinity aspect of yourself, the more it really makes any percentage, 20 or more or less, it makes it pretty stellar. Because when you bring God to the earth plane, it's pretty stellar. So even though, now, if I'm doing 80% spiritual, 20% material, but I'm broke and sick and messed up in my relationships, something's not authentic there. I thought I was 80-20, but it might have been I was 20 spiritual and the rest is just messed up human. So you have to be able to look at it. Now I can say, I'm grateful that the spiritual that seems non-material has served me enough to give me the ability to write books and they sell and I give them away. And you shouldn't give them away, you should sell them. Yeah, whatever. Because the material is less, I do things that are non-materialistic. But if you try to know your spiritual and honor the material, it's going to create anxiety. If you do the opposite, forego the spiritual, knowing and accepting and enjoying the material more, it's going to create depression. And the more you vacillate between these two, the more you're going to have anxiety, depression. Anxiety, depression. Not a great way to live. So being an integrated channel, I mean, it's a huge responsibility. And when you've got people saying, hey, what about the rules, the laws? You can't eat that, that's bad. You can't do that, that's bad. Right? It's going to build an anxiety because there's a knowing and there's these opinions. And your knowing doesn't match the opinions. And the opinions can sometimes be very loud. And what I chose to do in my own personal life was this 80%. Nobody explained this to me. It just happened. And I would love to have, going back, it would have been great to have a teacher that knew this kind of stuff, that knew these things, and said, hey, Michael, here's how it's going to happen. Here's how it's going down. Here's what's happening to you. I just knew the truth. I just knew I'm going to step into this and live this. I love it. I love the feel. I love the vibe. And it's me. It felt organic. Not like something I wished I could be. It felt like this is me. I love this spirituality. And yet, it meant that this is what I did. This is who I am. And it was everything I do. I'm traveling 300 days a year on tour. There are rock stars. There are bands that said, and then we were doing great. We got along and all that. But then we went on tour. And it was a lengthy tour. It was an unusually long tour, 6 months. We hated each other. We broke up the band after that. I'm telling you, touring like this, traveling, living in hotels, at least they had liquor and groupies and each other as band members to kind of, play off of. For me, it's just always on my own. Walking through airports. I would say 90% of my career was like that. Walking through every, hotel. It's a weird, surreal existence. And I think when I overheard, and saw band members and people talking about how taxing and horrible that lifestyle was, that I started to go, I had a horrible experience for 40 years of my life touring. But then I went, no. That's their interpretation of how they experience it. I don't know how I made it through with sanity. But at least it taught me, when I heard other people struggle with it, it taught me, sort of explained some of the challenges I went through inside and out. How the toll it took on one's being. Sanity as well as everything else. I mean, I remember moments and going, but this is all I know. And so I put it out of my mind. When I arrived at another hotel, we're more strangers, that all you meet. And I do sessions day in and day out, one after another, 12 hours at a time. And it's just the strangest existence. And if I would have had the world telling me I wouldn't have done it, then I wouldn't have fulfilled my soul's purpose. So I knew this was right, but the world is saying it's terrible and it drives you crazy. Fortunately, I didn't hear them telling me that when I was doing it. So I was able to know the truth and go with it. I had an automatic thing. I check into another hotel room. Once I get in, I put my luggage in my room because I know sessions are coming up, and usually an hour away or whatever. I have to go to the vending machine and clear out the famous Amos cookies. Because that's going to be my food for the next few days. Not kidding. I don't have time for restaurants, and I don't eat what's in restaurants. So all I could do, clear out, and God forbid that they'd be out of them. I'd have to go to another hotel across the street and clear out their famous Amos. And I'd get like 10 bags of famous Amos, and then take them to my room. And I would have one bag, for lunch, one bag. And that was my life. That was my diet. I know, and it's surreal. But I'm saying this to say, you're a channel. You might be only a little bit, say, an unconscious channel. If you have only little epiphanies popping through now and then, it's kind of like being an unconscious channel. Congratulations. You are a channel. Everybody. But is it like unconscious and they just leak through once in a while and you didn't even know it? Or have you written a book and you're a teacher somewhat, so you're more of a conscious channel, meaning you're just clear that you're doing this on purpose. Now you're more of a conscious channel. You're no better or worse than an unconscious channel. I'm just saying it's different. That's really cool. But the universe is going to call one day and say, Are you ready to become a more integrated channel? Whew, man, that's intense. Because, it's what it's doing in part is, if you're ready to do this, it's not just about what you're going to do differently, it's how you do them differently. And when you sign up for this, immediately the dam starts shaking. Because immediately the world says, we're going to increase pressure against your consciousness. That literally means your mind can get a bit strained, a bit pressured. What I tend to do as a relief cut, we might call it, is doing my best to see the light everywhere. So it's not just building in me that it's something I need to share, but seeing it everywhere helps take it from me like the water and bringing some of it on the other side to relieve the pressure on the dam. Is that making sense? So I'm fortunate. I wish I'd have known this 30 and 40 years ago, but it is what it is. For me, there were times where I didn't know what it was, but I wanted friends. I just wanted normal. All I'm doing is touring, and it's like I was married when I was a kid, 20 till 30 years old. I wasn't there because I'm touring, so it's a really strange existence. But the spiritual me, 80% goes, I know. But there was a 20% human being saying, but wouldn't it be nice? I mean, can I just have a lover for a moment? Can I have friends? Can just put your feet up, just anything normal. And there was nobody saying, well, here's the list of normal things you can go and do, Michael. Nobody could tell me, because nobody knows this stuff exists, these kinds of issues and growth spurts and whatever else. So that's kind of a vulnerable sharing to let you know how strange and how surreal this was. Probably the closest to sanity I could find were moments with strangers who I could just be myself, and they didn't, and myself is what you see is what you get. There's a spiritual being and all, and this is mostly what I live. So it was kind of nice because people, I could just laugh with them. They're not going, oh, Michael's laughing. They don't even know who I am. So if I laugh, it's just, I'm a guy laughing with them, and they have conversations about things, and I get to just, wow, that's great. See, that was how I found some sanity. I didn't know that's what I was doing at the time. But as a 30-year-old, it was different, less mature than as a 40-year-old and as a 50-year-old and as a 60-plus-year-old now. It's learning. But I'm glad that I guess I can share some of that to maybe carve off some of the learning curve anybody else would have to go through. But how beautiful that we now get to see, oh my God, there's light everywhere, the light of God. And there's still the human, the part that's going, some relief cuts, please. Let some of that water out, please. How? Just laughter or whatever. And I'm okay with it. Mostly I talk to myself. Walk through my house talking to Jesus or talking to God or talking to, Mother, the Divine Mother. I mean, it's okay. That's not bad, or you're not insane, unless your neighbors can hear you. But, but it's, this is me. And I walk through the house singing, and that's it. Any amount of friendships I have or can have are deeply appreciated. But I can't forego my spiritual self and do nothing but a human experience, because it doesn't go well. I mean, I tried it as a 30-year-old. I tried to go, well, I wonder if there's some normal, like human, because I went through a divorce. So now I'm like, what am I going to do now? And I sat with that, for a little while. And, and one day I went, I'm going to go out dancing. Never danced in my life. And I'm like, wow, I'm 30. I'm going to go to a nightclub for my first time. I didn't go and get stoned or drunk or anything. I just went because I like music. And I'm like, wow. And I thought, this is kind of interesting. What do you do? What do you wear? And if you want to ask somebody to dance, how do you do it? I have no idea. What sign are you? I don't know. I don't know what I'm supposed to say. It's so weird. Spiritually mature, humanly immature. You see what I'm doing? And that's a rift again. I'm like, like a kid at a high school dance or a middle school dance. The nerdy kid, what do I do, man? How do I ask him to dance? Get rejected. How do you deal with this stuff? I don't know. So I go and I remember I went and bought pants to be able to go out and a shirt. And I went by my ex's house. I said, listen, does this look okay? She's like, you bought clothes? She swear to God, she's like, you're kidding me. Jeans, I'm not a wear jeans kind of guy. And she's like, you bought jeans. Wow, you look great. You're so handsome. She'd do this. You're so handsome. You will enjoy yourself. Of course, she was like, get out. But, not really. But you see, it was new. So for me, these were nervous moments. People watching wouldn't have understood that. So having friends you can bounce these things off of. The Beatles said, the reason we didn't go crazy like Michael Jackson or Elvis was because we had each other. These individuals that had all this fame and success had nobody really to bounce it off of. It was all coming in on them, and it was too much. We could just, as soon as one of us was getting too high, the other, we could cut them down. We could play off each other. And so having some form of a support system that understands at least a little of what you're going through is essential. I'm going to start coming to a close, but there's something real quick I'm going to share that's an amazing story I saw in a biography of somebody. And this is a really amazing example because everything's love or a cry for love. Well, in the professional wrestling world, I remember, there's the famous Hulk Hogan. And then there was a guy also, Roddy Piper, and he's this guy that would wear a kilt and, and that was his shtick, but he was like the bad guy wrestler, always bad-mouthing everybody and all that. So anyway, he and Hulk Hogan were not friends at all. They hated each other. And so they would be nemesis and they would, wrestle each other professionally and all that, but they really didn't like each other. Until towards the end of the life, Piper had so many injuries, some of them caused by Hogan, but he had so many injuries, his body's breaking down, and he's retiring and he's starting to feel a depression, here and there, but he's trying to get through life. In the meantime, he reaches a certain age in his 50s, and he did an interview. When he did his interview, he would only get like halfway through sentences and forget what he was saying because he had a lot of damage. But he would start forgetting. But what he was doing was he was starting to have a stroke on the air, and nobody knew. But he wouldn't be able to finish sentence. He'd go, well, let me answer that again, or let me start over. And it wasn't going well. Now the newscaster, he's laughing, thinking, oh, it's just kind of fun. Maybe he's drunk because he was slurring a little. Nobody knows. Well, he's done with the interview. He talks to his wife. She's like, what was that about? I don't know, honey. He goes to bed and he dies that night. Now, his last year or two, he became close friends with Hulk Hogan. Remember, everything's love or a cry for love. There was no love between them. But there really was. They just couldn't find it till the end. Now they became friends. Now here's a really amazing story. Hulk Hogan says, yeah, I heard about it like a day or two later that he had died. And he goes, I was really devastated, because we became close. And I just grieved for days, but I was just in a state of shock for a day or two. He said, and then something weird happened. I went home and on my voicemail was a voicemail from the guy. But the voicemail came today. The guy died 2 days ago. Okay? Now you could say maybe it's not cyberspace like your phone. This is the old machines. So you could say, well, maybe somehow he just didn't notice it was there. But that's unlikely because it would have been when he was slurring and, it wouldn't have made sense. The message came through at least it came through after he died. Now, what did the message say? The guy says to Hulk Hogan, hey, bro, I'm doing fine now. And I wanted you to know I love you. I'm in the light now, and I'm walking with Jesus. Yeah. Like, wow! And Hulk Hogan's tearing up, and he's shaking as he says it, and he says, I couldn't wrap my mind around this for days. Everybody's channeling. In that moment, something in him was open enough because of a friendship, that a friend could come through and leave a message. And the message is audible. You can hear it. Okay, in the interview, they play it. You hear the guy's voice saying this. You'll have loved ones that pass over and they won't be able to reach out to you for various reasons, but mainly filters. Sometimes it'll scare you, make you miss them more. Who knows the differing reasons? But we are all going to get to the place where there are no layers, no levels, no veils, and we'll simply know each other at the highest, truest sense. The highest thing I can channel is Christ consciousness. If you don't want to call it Christ, call it love. Call it the I am presence. But it means you can be open to receive a voicemail from a loved one. And it's not always going to look like two people that meditated and did eye gazing with each other. It could be somebody you were combative with. But somehow it was set aside enough that a miracle could happen. And these things happen all the time. But just people aren't that open to it yet. Songs, like Lennon and McCartney both said, sometimes we would write songs, they would just come completely to us. There was no struggle. It would just be there. This is how the song's going to go. The chorus, all the bits. So that's channeling. Look at your own lives. Ask yourself, because you are a channel and there's only a couple types you can be. Are you a conscious channel? Are you an unconscious channel? If you're an unconscious channel, I recommend that you stop for a minute and say, I would recommend this. I'm not saying what you're doing is wrong or bad at all, because it's beautiful. All forms of channeling, light and love is great. But I would stop and ask myself, if I'm an unconscious channel, I wonder if there's any part of me that's distancing this. Am I afraid? Why don't I remember my dreams? Just start with that. It's because something happened traumatically and it shut that down. Start falling back in love with yourself, rising back in love. Start forgiving whatever scared you out of knowing your dreams. You have the right to know them. They're yours. And ask for them to come back. Open back up to remembering knowing your dreams and then any other messages of love, light coming through. Be open to someone passes away if you want to hear from them. Don't force it. Don't have an agenda. And don't put an expectation. Just be open. And being open to the presence of God itself. And what they say won't always be, okay, start writing. This will be a bestseller. A couple weeks ago, one of the clearest times I've ever experienced the Divine Mother. Two different times within a week or two. One time, she said, I want you to know how much I love you. And I'm just downloading that for day. I'm like, wow, and that's taking my consciousness to whole new levels. Another time she said, I've always loved your sense of humor. I'm like, thank you for getting that. No. Nobody gets me, man. And that meant a lot. So you don't know what the words are going to be. The words might even take the form of another person saying, hey, how are you doing today? By the way, I've always thought you were such a giving person. That's spirit trying to get to you in a way that you can hear it. Don't ever think that it wasn't telling you that directly. If it comes through another person, thank you. If you tell me that, I'm going to thank you. But I also, inside, I'm going to go, thank you. Because I know you're being a vessel for that message. And when you bring me a message of, Michael, you're a jerk, I hate you, that's going to be simply my ego coming through or your ego coming through. What do I want to do? Hate it? Fight it? Sorry that you feel that way. If there's anything I can adjust within reason, I'll do so. If I can't, I'll change what I can and accept what I can't. And lastly, remember, you're not just conscious and unconscious. You're meant to be, and you will. Everybody, every being will eventually become what they were once channeling in spurts. Everybody's destiny is to become the divine again. First, you'll talk about it. First, you'll talk about it like you don't believe in it. There's that level of people. Then you'll talk about it religiously. I believe in Jesus Christ as my personal Savior. Just repeating it, reciting it. I believe in Jesus as my personal Savior. I have my Bible right here. I carry my Bible everywhere I go because I'm religious or whatever. I'm saved. Jump in the water and that book's going to weigh you down and you'll drown. You're not saved. You're not saved. You have to become what you read in that book. What did the book tell you? It tells me love and forgiveness. Put it down and start practicing love and forgiveness. Well, I would, but there's other things. That's religion. Then you go to a level of the spiritual. Oh, I get it. I'm supposed to be living this. And that's very cool. Kind of the path of the mystic is part of the spiritual, but it's not completely. It's its own things to a degree. So it's spiritual, and I get it. Now you start becoming that thing. When you get that, just that one point, if you heard nothing today but that, you eventually have to become all the things you talked and heard and read and whatever. When you become those, you are becoming awakened. You are becoming more Buddha-like. You will, if you come back, you're going to come back at a completely different level. Not with a little growth, like in the trillion lifetime cycles of reincarnation. If you get this one point, I am to become, then you're already starting to become. So when you come back, you're coming back as a person who is being that thing instead of just needing to hear more about it. You tell it to me, I start telling it to you, and I start becoming it. And everything starts changing. Everything. The quantum leap. And then what is it I want to become? When you start owning, I don't just want to become wise or a little nicer, but I want to become the divine. It's a tall order, but it's your destiny. It's the destiny for us all. But I am saying, in part of what I said today, the world doesn't resonate with that frequency. It just doesn't resonate with it. So it's going to create its share of anxieties, tensions, and they're a strange thing to deal with. So if for you, and I'm not justifying anything you do, but I am saying as a human being, I understand it more now in my life. That it can make you want to smoke like Casey did. It could make you neurotic like Helen was. Just you're becoming deeply spiritual, but it can take a toll. So if for you, it's having chocolate ice cream and your friends say, oh my God, do you know what's in ice cream? Get behind me, Satan. This is the only thing right now that keeps me sane. Don't be talking about my chocolate ice cream. Guys, and honestly, whatever is your thing, breathe and thank God you found a thing. You mustn't become that thing, then you're an addict. Of a food addict or a sex addict, whatever it is. You don't become it, but you just recognize, this is my temporary calming. Now, I have tried to pretend I have no need to have a calming. And when I say pretend, I don't mean that literally denial. I just mean I've tried to be so spiritual that I won't need any of those things. And all it did was intensify the angst inside. But I still chose not to reach out for a thing to fix it. So what it did is it intensified my need to commune and say, all I want to do is have you help me repair this. And that in itself is not an easy thing to do. I'm not claiming to be better than anybody else, because if I do that and it's a struggle and you do a cigarette and your struggles are gone, you might be further on than I am. As long as you're not judging what you reach out for as your sanity. And probably my weakest link when I reached out, it wasn't for drink smoke, it was for friendships. And I realized, but I don't have them. And I'm going to go to God. And then when I do have them now and again, they're bits and pieces. I appreciate them. I love them. I send gratitude to them. And I don't possess them. I just see it as, thank you. You know, somebody channeled friendship for me today. Because when you're doing the spiritual leader thing, it's a strange lifestyle. Please take a few centering breaths. A lot to consider, a lot to absorb, a lot to integrate. Just breathe for a moment. Decompress the tensions of the body, of the mind, the lower self. And absorb what you heard that made sense to you. And make it yours. Make it yours. What did you hear? Well, Michael was channeling. Michael taught. Michael said, no, that's nice. That's good. That's a good start. But I said, first you're going to hear people telling it to you, but you have to eventually become it. What did you hear that made sense? And that you could now bring to others. Remember, sometimes the people you judged that needed to drink and do whatever, that's their way of coping. Is it their higher self? Well, of course not. But they're coping. I've known singers that sang such pure notes, they had an eating disorder because they needed food to create a density in their system, or else they were vibrating at too high a frequency. Often psychics, with all the high energy astral work they do, often they're overweight because the food and or the excess weight helps to ground them, help them integrate with all that astral energy. It's okay. Everything is okay. Love or a cry for love. I understand them a bit more now, you can say to yourself. And then shift it to, and now I understand me a little bit more now. I understand my eating when I'm anxious. I understand my smoking when I'm stressed. None of these things cured me, but I understand them. The Auschwitz survivor Viktor Frankl said, if you are going to be a light to the world, you might expect to burn. Just simply absorbing, what did you learn today? And it becomes you. Do you want to dim your light so that this doesn't get too much for you? Dim your light. Is that what you want to do? Is that what feels right? Because if you do it and you don't really want to, you'll create anxiety around that. If we now see ourselves leaving this room, how are we different? Hearing what we heard. How are we different? Closing the program online when we're done. How are we different? The highest consciousness is the I am presence, and that's what I will eventually become. But first, I'll be channeling it. I give thanks for all the unconscious times I've channeled the light. I give thanks for all the conscious times I channeled the light. And now I'm asking for assistance with becoming that light. I'm asking you, Mother, to descend into my being and help weave a beautiful tapestry for me that helps me become this presence, helps me integrate all that I once thought knew. I become these things. But help me, Mother, in the way only you can, to make this a gentle, graceful process as much as possible. Help me to forgive my filters and beliefs in limitation around this. And I give thanks for anyone at any time who's ever served as a friend to support me in this process. And so it is. Thank you. Boy, we went a lot of places today. So breathe that in. Think about, just in one sentence, what you heard or learned today that you can apply in your life, what made a difference for you, and what might make a difference for other people in your life. Take not just one sentence, hopefully several, as a new being, into your life, into your world. That way you're not just integrating it, you're living it in your own day-to-day life. Thank you. Thank you. Please stand for our closing prayer. I can really tell and feel that a lot of folks are really integrating now just what we talked about today. I can tell there's a lot going on inside, processing. It's pretty powerful. It's really palpable. I can feel that. Online as well. God bless you all. Thank you. Our closing prayer, if you don't know the words, it's on your bulletin and it's posted online. But first, just a few seconds of appreciation inside. Appreciation to unity of Sedona as an entity that we share, to each other, to Spirit for guiding us here and being so ever present. And gratitude to ourselves for making healthier and healthier, wiser and wiser choices. To be here, for example, instead of places that might not have been as consciously in alignment with our true self.
Well said.
Thank you, brother. The light of God surrounds us.
We are the light of God.
The love of God enfolds us.
We are the love of God.
The power of God protects us.
We are the power of God.
And the presence of God watches over us.
We are the presence of God.
Wherever we go, God is, I am, we are, and so it is. Peace be with you all. We'll see you all soon. Thank you. Thank you.